Hey everybody, welcome to DCxPC Live Presents Scene Support, the podcast that highlights the unsung heroes of the music scene, show promoters, engineers, record labels, zine writers, photographers, graphic artists, and more. I'm your host Scott Pash, founder of DCxPC Live, a DIY label committed to documenting live punk, hardcore, ska, and metal on short-run vinyl. After 3 decades of playing in bands and booking shows, I've learned just how crucial the behind-the-scenes folks are to keeping the scene alive. Today, I'm joined by someone who's played a major role in that work, Brent Friedman from Exponential Booking. If you spent any time in the ska or punk worlds over the past few years, you've likely felt the impact of his work. Even if you didn't realize it at the time, Exponential Booking is a boutique booking and management agency that helps grow the careers and brands of some of the most vital names in the genre. We're talking legends and current torchbearers like the Suicide Machines, Against All Authority, Big D and the Kids Tables, Kill Lincoln, Chair, Folly, Scott Tree Network, Bad Operation, Devin Kansas Solutions, Half Past Two, I'm the Gone, Hell Beach, Jidamar and the Traders. Whether it's putting together national tours, helping bands navigate a tough industry, or just staying true to the DIY roots that keep his culture thriving, Brent's work is all about building community and lifting others up. Let's get into it. How you doing, Brent?
You just made my job so much easier. It's so funny. I'm so bad at explaining what I do, and you just kind of gave the Cliff Notes version of it very well. So,
Thank you. But
very kind words.
Thank you for showing up because I've been on this end as the local show promoter, sometimes dealing with just regular bands booking their own shows, every now and then dealing with booking agents, but I've never actually, in all my 30 years, talked to someone whose main role is a booking agent for bands that generally have guarantees and writers and things of that nature. So I'm just very curious to hear how you got into this, how it all started. We can go wherever you want to go with this. Where would you like to start talking about where you're at and how you're there?
Jeez. I always just talk about the easiest way to describe, I guess, my origin story of getting into a role of a behind the scenes thing rather than the musician myself is I jokingly say that I was always just the sober, responsible person in all of my own bands, and so playing in DIY bands throughout the later years of high school and early college and stuff like that, I just for whatever reason just understood that there needed to be some sort of organization involved when you're touring, because especially DIY touring, there's so many things that are just unknown, and the best thing you can do is just be as organized as possible. And so the early years, I was before I even knew what advancing a show was, or God, I didn't even know what the term load in meant.
Yep.
What I would do is I put together these books that were, and it predated smartphones. So, and I'd print MapQuest directions, yep. And then I'd have these sheets that would be here's the check-in time, and here's the address, and here's the contact of the person we booked the show with, and here's local things or whatever. And so it was all these things that I was doing that, of course, later on I learned that was tour managing. And, obviously when I discovered that, it was earth-shattering. I was wait, you can get paid to do this? I've been doing this shit.
It's the very thing that I do all the time for my band.
For free for so long. But yeah, so I was doing that part. And of course I was in a band, DIY bands with my brother. And my brother was the one who was kind of, hustling to book the shows. I think it was during the heyday of MySpace. So it was, a lot of their stuff was through that. But he was the one booking. But again, I'd be the one where I was just okay, well, we need to be organized under it. So I would have these 3-ring binders, which I still have today, just because I just love to see how ridiculous amount of work I put into I'm sure none of it was helpful at all, but I just felt the need to do it. But
I'm going to say it was, because I did the same thing, touring through the 90s, early 2000s in my own band, and then I married someone who had been in a band that had done touring, and then we got in a band together, and we would sit down and make the binders, the Yahoo printouts plus the MapQuest, because sometimes they gave you different ones.
Yeah.
We would source everything out, load in and nearby hotels or motels, not only just to sleep at, but we found that you could grab, food innocuously from there, or if you got lost, a lot of time a hotel would have a map of the town that they could highlight and tell you where to go.
But so that was, so again, my brother was booking the shows. I was the one kind of organize it. And then a little bit later on, when my brother got a little bit out of music, and back up a little bit, I was always I mean, I still am very, very shy and very, very high anxiety. And so like, I think like back then I was comfortable with having this like kind of backseat role, some booking the shows, and I was just playing drums, but then doing kind of the organizing, again, behind the scenes. And then when my brother left and I continued playing in bands without him, it kind of like forced me to come out of my shell a little bit. And that was, again, still kind of through the MySpace days. And so it was like, I feel like back then too, like playing in ska bands, there was like this like kind of easy network of just like, oh, you're coming through this city, well, this is the one ska band you hit up for a show, right? It almost was like kind of easier in a way. So I did that, and then I would fill in the blanks by like, again, asking my brother for old contacts or just kind of this and that. And so that was kind of how I learned like the booking part of it, if you will, although it's debatable whether I ever learned how to actually book shows. So yeah, so I would do, and then by then I was, again, still doing it for my own bands. I was booking the shows, and then just by nature, I was still kind of like, still doing the folders, and like my folders kind of evolved over the years as I kind of started doing, like learning what you were supposed to be doing, I guess, with, which information and what. And, again, like I would spend so much time on making these folders that I'm sure like we barely looked at. I think for me, it was all like just having the sense of like having all this information in one spot in case I ever needed it, I guess. Again, I don't know. But I just like doing it. I just like keeping everybody organized and stuff. And so, yeah, at some point I just, what was that? Eventually just got like hired on to do that, to book essentially professionally. There was this guy, Tom, who hired me for this company, Over Easy Booking, which still exists today. And they book and manage MXPX and Goldfinger and bunch of bands that I was not necessarily a huge fan of, but it was, still within the punk realm. Started off just booking shows for bands like Pilfers and the Mr. T Experience stuff. And it was kind of like my first stab at booking professionally, if you will. Sure. And learned a lot about kind of like every avenue of the music industry, because I was just like taught to do it so hands-on. And that company, again, not only just booked bands, but also managed and just essentially handled the day-to-day of like everything. So if a band wanted to do literally anything, we were the ones that helped do it. And so I learned how to do, everything from running a merch store to handling like the rollout of a new single to a live stream to, properly advancing shows and writing contracts and everything across the board for, really anything, not just in the booking world. But, the big takeaway from doing that job was, while I think like the traditional booking agent is simply just like booking the shows, and like they get it, they get the show announced to the promoter, and then like they kind of like wipe their hand clean, and their job is done. Where it's like I was kind of taught, well, like no, we're basically like on the job from the second we're booking it all the way to like the day of, after the show, basically. And so like I learned, all about like marketing and rollout and tracking ticket counts and what to do with those ticket counts, and essentially helping bands market their own shows to their own fans. And like, while obviously we were using promoters, in some cases we weren't using promoters. There were sometimes I learned how to essentially cut out a promoter completely. If it was a show that we knew was a slam dunk, we'd rent out the room and kind of act as our own promoters and get the band paid more and blah blah blah. But yeah, I don't know, I learned so much about just essentially running a campaign and not just relying on the promoter to promote the show, because I always think of it as like, whenever I'm booking a show, like the band is equally responsible for the band, or myself, or I don't know, kind of interchangeable at this point, equally responsible for promoting the show as much as it is with the promoter. So I kind of think of it, every show as like a co-promotion, just because fans want to hear about the shows from their fan, or from the bands themselves. Not from the promoters necessarily. They just want to hear from the band, and I feel like that really helps. So,
as a local promoter, I like to think that both the touring bands and the local bands help promote, and the venue itself. Like, if everyone helps, but they don't always. I'm always kind of shocked when I say, hey, I'm going to print out a couple hundred handbills and I can mail them directly to your house. Who's local wants to pass them out? And none of the local bands say, hey, send them my way. I'll pass them out over the next month, or I'll hang up some flyers. I'm like, I just find that odd. Like, why doesn't everyone want to participate in that way?
Yeah, it's I don't know, and it's like kind of dating back to just the early days of me, even just trying to be the responsible, organized one. I feel like over the years I kind of just got like maybe burnt too many times, or just like relying on the other party or other parties to do what they're supposed to do and not doing it. I eventually was just like, well, I'm just going to make sure that this
It
is
gets done.
happening regardless of it being my job or whatever. Like, I'm just going to. So I always, like, throughout the years, I just figured out how to just, if I don't, I'm very bad at articulating what I'm trying to say, but
No,
like,
no, I
yeah,
think
I
I
don't
get
know.
it because I also manage a band called World Sucks. So I just finished booking and they just finished their June tour. It was an 8-day run. And like, I'm used to booking stuff for my own band. Like booking it for someone else and having someone actually pay me to book is like really outside my realm. I'm like, well, how do I make sure that I'm not just booking this and handing it off to Mr. Promoter person and then they're just gonna like drop the ball and not make sure there are bands and that's like so it's like the constant follow up as if it was my own show, right? It's basically what would I want my own show to do, and then I had to follow up and go, okay, at this show, I am seeing no activity from the bands, no activity from the promoters, no activity from the venue. So I need to make sure that I am having the band social media posting, my own social media, but I also might need to run some social media ads in that area because
Hmm.
I don't see any action occurring. But you can't just drop it off and assume someone's going to take care of it. It just
Correct.
doesn't
Yeah.
usually.
Yeah, and I've gotten like better at like understanding. Like I feel like with some promoters and venues and even bands, like they're all trying to sell 30+ shows a month at a time. So like I get it. Like of course they're not going to give my show the attention that I want them to give, and that's fine. Like I get it, and it took me a while to like realize that, and that's also like why I do try to make it as easy as possible. Like, well, I'm gonna handle like here's all the localized assets. I'll give you ad
Sure.
access if you want to run ads. Here's like an approved copy. Let me make this as easy on you as possible so that you will want to help our show a little bit more. And or like, hey, we'll use our email list, or we'll use this, or we'll do that. And I guess I just try to like fill in the gaps like where I can, and kind of like I feel like venue teams and promoters like will respond positively more to me if like if they see that we're also working. That's going to make
Sure.
them like want to work a bit harder too. Again, I've just over the years, there's so many people who have just not done the thing that they're supposed to do, and I don't even get frustrated about it
Yeah.
anymore. I'm just kind of, all right, let me just find a workaround, and I'll just get it done
Yeah.
myself or whatever,
Um,
which is fine. But yeah, so I worked for that company from 2016 through essentially the pandemic. I'll spare you the details, but for mental health reasons, I essentially left that job in
Totally understandable.
2020, and I was just overwhelmed with the work itself, as well as I think like without realizing it, just the trauma of all my friends losing jobs and the pandemic and just so much stuff going on that year. My financial situation was unknown, but I just didn't care. I just kind of wanted to reset my mental health, and so I just left that, got a hard reset. And I think that being forced to stay at home and there not being live shows and all that was kind of a blessing in disguise for me, I guess, in a way, because it forced me to kind of figure out what I wanted to do. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to work in music, again or whatever, which was fine. I was just happy to kind of just stare at a wall for 2 weeks straight, and kind of figure out what the fuck I wanted to do. And I was I eventually got an under the table warehouse job where we were all just wearing masks and just processing orders. A very endless job, but I was
Sure.
got some income that way. And then I was playing in We Are the Union at the time, and we were about to announce a new record, which was Ordinary Life in
Right.
2021. And I knew that album campaign would take a lot out of me, and so I even at that point like left the warehouse job just so I can like kind of concentrate on that 24/7. And so that was like a big part of my essentially what I was working on before shows came back. And then as shows started coming back, with the success of that record, and also just a lot of the stuff that was happening in the Bad Time Records world with the new
Hmm.
Kalinkin record and just all of that, essentially all my friends were, all my friends' bands were kind of like moving up to the next echelon kind of thing. And at one point, Mike from Bad Time was like, hey, obviously all these bands are going to start playing like bigger and bigger shows. Like, do you just want to be like the in-house booking agent? for all the bands. And I think like my immediate response was like, I don't know if I want to do booking, but I was like more concerned with, I was like, well, I don't want my friends being taken advantage of. And I know the jargon, I know, how to navigate that world. And if nothing else, I can at least be a buffer between the bands and booking agents and other agents and promoters and whatnot. So I was like, okay, well, sure. Why not? Like, if anything, like coming back and doing this for my friends, like, what's the worst that can happen or whatever, like, honestly, it kind of started as, I wouldn't say a hobby, but it was just like, sure, I'll do it, whatever, And so, yeah, shows started coming back and I started doing that. And so, at one point, Mike from Bad Time, like, even created this, like, email address for me, badtimebooking.com. And that was kind of like essentially the working title for the quote-unquote agency. But it was again, I was kind of, like, available for any band on Bad Time Records, which back then, I think there was only, like, 9 or 10 bands or something like that. So, I was like, okay, this doesn't seem as daunting. And then started doing that, and then... next thing I know, I am kind of being overloaded with a lot of the work, and eventually it didn't make as much sense for me to be the booking agent for everyone on the label because there were just so many. And at that point, it was just like shit was going to slip through the cracks and be unfair. I would barely get any weekends or anything like that. So at some point, we had to kind of be like, okay, this is just like the roster. Everyone else obviously will try to include, but everybody else can kind of just book their own shows or whatever. And then as that evolved, I was also just, it's funny, I can't even remember how the Against All Authority thing happened. It was me and my buddy Mark. Mark used to sing for a band called The Code.
Yes.
We became friends over the years, and he helped me out a lot with putting me in contact with AAA and later on Suicide Machines and stuff. And somehow him and I, probably primarily him, with Against All Authority, they became friends again because I know that was a reason they weren't playing for a while. And then when they were ready to play shows, Mark and I were the team. So yeah, I got to book the first show back after I think it was 17 years, which was fast. And then we were kind of off to the races from there. I haven't really thought, it's funny to again, I'm just I don't know why I was put in that driver's seat, but I was. And then Suicide Machines was one of those stories where I was originally I was, I uncovered some basically royalty money that was owed to them, a lot of money. So and I was already in contact with them, and I was like, hey, I found this money for you. I could do the paperwork for you, blah, blah, blah. And so they're like, sure, why not? And then that evolved into me kind of being their, essentially kind of finance manager. I would do their books and stuff like that. And my background with any of that is I have a degree in mathematics.
Okay.
But I never really did any formal accounting work. And funny enough, the bass player for Suicide Machines is an accountant, but he was I don't want to do it for my own band.
Yeah.
So I did that, and then that was, I guess, doing a good job at that. And then I don't remember how the next part happened, but my partner and I, on the side, we also run the merch stores for a handful of bands. We do we process orders for Catbite. We do the Jarrett Scutcheon Network stuff. We do Direct Hit. And obviously now we do Suicide Machines and Against All Authority. But yeah, so at some point they were just do you want to run our merch store for us? And I was like, sure. So then I got that. And then that it kept evolving. And then eventually it was just kind of I had pitched at one point, as I was doing their accounting for all their show weekends, I would kind of pick apart stuff and be like, hey, you could be getting paid more money here, and you could do that. And then eventually it led to me pitching to be their booking agent, and then I did that. And later it was just hey, do you just want to manage this thing? So it's it literally went from fan to managing the band in, I don't know, 2-3 years or whatever. And so having the Bad Time bands, but then now these other bands that weren't on Bad Time, it at some point people would hit me up for label stuff, or people would hit up Mike for booking stuff, and there was this overlap that didn't make too much sense. And so at some point, Mike also just nicely asked, do you want to just rebrand this thing as your own thing? That way it's distinguished from the label. Not that there was any bad blood on Mike and I get it. Obviously still great friends, and I book his band. It made sense to me too. I was like, yeah, you're right. Let's change this. And so I thought about it for a couple weeks, and then I was like, exponential, that involves math, and also
Yes.
like if anyone wants a deeper meaning, like it relates to the exponential growth of my career, some shit. I don't
And
really
the
know. So
bands and yeah.
so I just like essentially rebranded. The roster stayed the same, but yeah, there's that, and then after with that kind of roster, obviously it brought some other clients, and so that's how I ended up with Big D, and yeah, it's weird. So what started as like let me do this for my friends, and let me phrase. I mean, like I'm friends with all the bands that are
Sure, of
on the
course.
roster. So, but like it started off again just with my friends in bad time, and now it's evolved into a full time job, which it's just so weird, man. Like, yeah, I went to school for math. I worked at a bank for 7 years. Like, I almost kind of wish I like had figured out that this was a way you could just pay your bills like
Sure.
20 years ago. But I don't know. I would have never known. So yeah.
It's a crazy idea, right? Like you mentioned to different friends. I have booked tours for bands as favors on a regular basis. I helped a band who just put out their album. They just graduated high school. I made them book their own tour, but I gave them all my resources. I said, you really have to book your first tour by yourself. It's good or bad.
Yeah.
You have to like learn that. But like I said, I manage World Sucks, and I had already booked half of the last tours they'd done just because I'm friends with them and I really respect who they are as people and as musicians. Like, no, we want to pay you to do it. I was like, pay me? I've never heard of such a thing. Who pays you? That's like being paid to be a promoter. I don't understand.
I know. Yeah, it's
Concept. It's weird. Okay, so how is it different? You were booking bands, let's say, that no one's heard of when you were booking your own bands, and now you're booking bands ranging from, Hell Beach, who are still relatively new, to like really staple people, like Against All Authority. Like, how does the booking process different? Like, do you go through a process of like, oh, I have this list of venues I go to, or do you do like good promoters? Like you've reached out to me now a couple of times after I helped out with the Big D show, but like I'm probably not the normal person you would reach out to in the past, I would imagine, or am I?
I mean, I feel like if you ask every agent, they're going to give you different answer.
Sure.
I feel like the traditional booking agent has like their just go tos in every spot, and I, as much as I sometimes do, I try to like everything's so case by case. So if it's just this band, or if it's this package, or it's this city or whatever, I take all those things in consideration, and I historically have a particular venue in mind for no matter what I'm booking. That's like the first mental step, and then based on whatever room it is, I know which of the people that I work with that works with that particular room, and so I'll go through them. And so, because I've definitely seen like corporate booking agents book a smaller independent room that you can probably just go through directly, but they'll use their Live Nation buddy to book that room, which is like, I have friends at Live Nation and I do book at Live Nation, but like it's just, you're kind of just like overcomplicating it that way, and maybe even getting the band less money because of like the extra overhead or whatever. Also, I'm not saying that what I do is the correct way to do it. I just I tell people all the time I'm kind of just making this up as I go, but yeah, like for the most part, like it's on the essentially the thing I'm selling, if it's just this band, or if it's this full package, or if it's whatever. And then obviously there's like the exception rules too, where it is this bigger band, but we want to do what's called an underplay, which is what we did for that Big D tour.
Sure.
And so, yeah, but again, like I kind of just always have a particular venue or venues in mind for where I'm, based on like the room size I want to put it in. And then, again, from there, based on which room it is, I usually know if I'm hitting up this person versus hitting up that person. And obviously, like if the venue is not available, obviously I have to go with like a plan B or plan C, or just get creative, or even reroute or whatever kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know. That's kind of the way that I approach it, I feel like.
And, do you have to adjust like the guarantees that you get for bands based on like where they're playing? Like I've seen Sick of It All in like DC, right? Pack the place out. Then I've seen them in Orlando on a Wednesday night at a venue where there was maybe 50 of us, which just blew my mind. I didn't understand why there would only be 50 people at a Sick of It All show.
Yeah.
Like, do you have to keep that in mind as you're booking? Do you really think about, have they been to this city? How does this city normally draw? Is this a city that really digs this type of stuff? Like, How do you think about all that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like, there's, a lot of bands I book too are just like on the weekend model where they'll just, I shouldn't say a lot of bands I have, but like, some of my bigger bands are for the most part, like they'll just want to fly in and do a Friday, Saturday, or even a Thursday through Saturday kind of thing or whatever. And like those kind of like exclusive shows, like I almost even treat those more like a festival. And I'm like really building out the bill and just making sure obviously there's a lot of money there. And obviously if it's a hometown versus like a, somewhere else, then that also comes into play as far as like how much money we're looking at. But if it's like a full tour and like, obviously we're doing like a Monday night somewhere, typically what I'll do is like, the rule of thumb is like, if it's like a weekday, middle of the week or whatever, you kind of just like do a smaller room. But then sometimes when I'll do a small room, also even adjust the ticket price to make sure the money kind of balances out. Like I guess there's no real easy answer to this. It's all just kind of case by case. But again, like, yeah, I mean, I know which markets the bands are, doing this numbers versus that. And I mean, I'm tracking that data religiously too. I have like a whole Dropbox folder, and like obviously you've seen my emails. I'm tracking ticket counts and stuff like that, and that's helpful for understanding the trajectories of tickets, but also like those final ticket numbers. Next time I'm going back to those cities, I can use that to properly adjust how much money or whatever the ticket price and stuff.
Sure, you like, hey, last time we played here, X, Y, and Z happened, so I
yeah.
Like this much, because I don't think anytime you've reached out to me, you've ever explicitly said, a guaranteed amount, like right off the bat that you were expecting.
I mean, the thing too is like, booking, 100 to 200 cap rooms, once you're going like that small too, it's just like, I'm sure there are agents that are going to beat you over the head for a fuck ton of money. Yeah. But like a small show like that, especially if it is like almost like a guaranteed sellout or full room, like, I'll just make it as easy as possible because I'm going to help you work to get that sellout, and the band's going to walk with more money and you're going to walk with more money anyways. So in some cases, I do take almost what's called like a risk versus reward deals, where it's like, okay, give me just like we'll do a door deal, but make sure rather than, just that way, whenever it gets to a certain point, the band actually walks with even more money than if there was like a guaranteed amount at the beginning, I guess.
Well, I mean, I tend to do like a guarantee minimum and then a percentage split if we hit
for sure, a
certain amount. And I really started to be like, do that in advance before the show ever happens.
Sure.
So the fans aren't walking in wondering what they're going to get paid. Because I've done that on tour before. I was like, oh, I wonder if we're going to get any money tonight. And that's fine, but not,
Yeah, no, for smaller bands too, that's huge. Like, yeah, I mean, you doing that is like above and beyond for sure. But yeah, I don't know.
Okay. So smaller bands, like, so how do new bands, like, so like, I'm going to just assume that Hell Beach is a fairly new one on your roster.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you choose who to work with versus who you already have? Because you only have so much bandwidth that we've already talked about. And what makes you decide to take on another band?
It's so funny. I keep like, I've told so many people I'm like basically at capacity and I can't really take on anymore, which is very true. There are some exceptions, and Hell Beach is they're just such a good band. Like honestly, like they're some of them used to be in the band Secret Spirit, which I was a fan of, but then like when the Hell Beach stuff came out, and like I'm probably a little biased too because like Mike released it as under his imprint label, not on Bad Time, but through Uncle Style, and he was like feeding me demos like early on, and I was just like, dude, I remember I listened to like their first EP like an embarrassing amount of times. Like it was just so good. And at the time I was just kind of like, being a brand new band, obviously they didn't even need a booking agent. But like, as it went on and stuff like that, as they were starting to get more support stuff and like, again, need that like friend to help like be the buffer for them. And I was kind of like, well, I was like, I don't even know if I necessarily have time for this, but like, I also, again, don't want my friends taken advantage of, and like, I don't want anyone else taking this job and like dropping the ball with it. So I'm just like, fuck it, let's just fucking do it,
And they're great band. I saw them at Fest last year. They were great.
Yeah, they're just such nice people, and they're just such a good band. And up until then, my entire roster was completely ska or ska punk, anything in that realm, and they were the first non-ska band, which is like, rebranding what I do away from Bad Time Booking also, I guess, kind of opened it up for me to do that.
You can like
still primarily booking ska shows, but But yeah, Hell Beach they're a great band. They were the one that broke the ska barrier for me. So
All right, I'm excited to see them again. So
hell yeah.
you keep mentioning, or you've mentioned a couple times, being like taken advantage of. You're not, I don't like to like go really negative, but I would like. Are there any like times where you're like you've really seen bands get taken advantage of either by promoters or by venues or by booking agents? I guess.
I don't have any specific examples. I guess, I feel like, booking agents talking to a band directly, they're going to talk to them a lot differently than they're talking to the way they behave when they're talking to another agent. Mm-hmm. So when an agent finds out that another band has an agent, like, yeah, they're gonna just do a complete 180 with just the way whether they're negotiating with them or just making sure that they have a say in what the art looks like, or just making sure that they're just properly represented on whatever it is that they're signing on for. So I mean, with smaller bands too, especially, like, I think other agents are going to be like, try to, I don't know, not pay them a lot of money or whatever. I just need to make sure they have, the industry standard of, like a band supporting a bigger band kind of thing or whatever. So yeah, I guess I don't really have any specific examples, but I think that, like, I've obviously had bands come to me and just like almost not even understand, like, they'll get an email from like an agent or like, maybe an offer to go support a show or tour or whatever, and like agents a lot of the times will maybe even use stuff that's deemed as like agent jargon, and so a band will literally like go to me like, what does this sentence even mean? And I have to kind of like translate it for them in layman's terms, essentially. So I think like maybe that's kind of what I mean a little more. But,
okay, that makes sense.
But yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Is it usually standard for them to approve like the opening acts? I know the Hell Beach show coming up, and then the Kill Lincoln show. You and the bands have specific ideas. I think with Hell Beach, I had to send you about like 5 or 6 different bands, have them listen to it. Is that the normal route that most bands go, that they want to like have a say?
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't know. I just feel like in the past, I mean, I hate to throw the genre of ska under the bus, but I feel like with ska bands, sometimes we've all experienced like doing a show and the promoter will add that just like very cringy local ska band or whatever, and we're just like, why is this band playing the show? And again, there's trouble bands in every genre. I don't know why I'm using this as the example, but like, and so, not to say this happens often, but it's more just like hey, just to do our due diligence, do you mind running the band by us before, just so like we can, because at the end of the day, obviously, like the touring band wants to play a fun show with bands they like and stuff. And,
sure.
There's nothing more of a bummer than playing a show with like an opener who is like either musically bad or maybe even problematic or just cringy or whatever. And so yeah, it's kind of just like crossing our T's, dotting our I's. So I think that's pretty common. I feel like some bands and some agents are also doing absolutely do not care. They just want the promoter to get the job done.
Yeah.
With filling that spot or whatever. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like we try to put a little more emphasis on like we're curating the show. So like, from a fan's perspective, like what do we want the fans to see kind of thing. So
I think that was probably the first time I've actually had someone, and I've done UK subs, NDC, but no one's ever specifically asked to hear first. But
oh no shit, really?
Yeah, I've never had that question.
Oh dang, okay, now I feel like I'm being a pain in the ass.
No, it's not a pain in the ass. I mean, you don't know me well enough to know that like I'm not going to put my own shitty band on there just because I'm the promoter. I'm not that guy. I hate having my own band play the shows I run. My old band was always wanted. I was like, no, I really don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And additionally, like I put your bands in the middle because I've never played Poughkeepsie, so like I really want to just put on a good show. And so I know in my head who would go well, who would draw, but you don't know me well enough to know that that's my thought process.
Yeah.
So,
For sure. But yeah, I think I want to say it's case by case, but I mean, yeah, as far as proving the locals go, I think that's somewhat common.
It didn't offend me.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, how interesting.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that's just like the history of me being burnt too many times, and I'm just trying to like, not that I want to control everything, and I will admit I do have control issues. I'm so bad at delegating and blah, blah, blah. But like, yeah, it's more just, again, just kind of like crossing our T's, dotting our I's, just kind of like making sure that everything is how the band wants it. Obviously, like at the level that like Hell Beach at and some of these smaller bands, like, obviously there's like, we're going to compromise a lot more than like if it's like a Suicide Machine show or something like that. Like everything needs to get approved kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
and that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So I try to cater that my expectations with that to the band too as well.
What's like the most difficult aspect of an average show? Like that you would say is like the biggest hurdle that you have to deal with, whether it's finding the venue or booking it, or like if you pick one thing, it's like, okay, this is the biggest hurdle that I almost always run into every time I'm booking a tour or booking a show.
Man, recently it's been venue availability. I feel like I used to be able to like no problem book a tour like 5 months out, and here I am sometimes now like straight up like getting holds like 11 months out, and they'll be like, oh, your fourth hold there, and I'm just like, who the like I know I've heard that Europe is like, they book like 18 months out or something crazy like that, and I feel, and the US used to not be like that, and I feel like now we're getting to that point. And I feel like part of it is like offsetting it from when shows came back in 2021, and it's just nobody's been able to like catch up. Everybody's just super behind or whatever. So like that's a huge factor, I will say. And other than that, another thing is just communication. Like, whether it's like promoters just taking forever to respond, or like when I do finally send, an announce email with all the instructions, they're not reading what I send, and just stuff like that. And obviously, like the larger the tour, the more room margin for error there is with all that stuff. That becomes like, I'm never offended if I got an email like a promoter or like a marketing team like 3 or 4 times before I get a response. I get it, everyone's busy, and also like I get everybody's just dealing with so much or whatever, but it doesn't make it any less annoying. And I try to be very quick with people. God, if I take like an extra day or two, I'll be like, I'm so sorry this took me a couple days, or we're just like, dude, you're still like way quicker than everybody else. So
you're always very consistent. But like I've seen when you say like I book 4 or 5 months out. Like I do a monthly show in Kingston, and I book 4 or 5 months out on that, and I do that to get the bands I want, because the bands are booking that far out. So it's like, oh, I want to book Soji from Philadelphia. You are booked 6 months out. Okay then.
Yeah.
So I guess it's March. I guess I'm going to book you into October then. So I'm going to get my date in October and book the show around you, because I need to reserve that date now. I had a show where a venue had a kitchen fire in Troy. Hopefully it comes back. El Dorado, great venue. And I had to try and find a new venue with like 3 weeks notice. It's very hard to move an entire show with 3 weeks notice. Yeah. I managed to, but only by like having this venue called Night Swim in Kingston letting me do a show before their show. So I did an early show at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But it was like, then I had to find a sound person because they don't have their own sound. And so it was like this whole, and it happened over at Camp Pennsylvania, because I had it covered. I never have someone else run my own show, but I was like, in this case it'll be fine. This venue has a thing up there. They take care of it. All I do is supply a door person, and the venue runs it very smoothly. They have their own sound person. But then when I switch venues, I'm like, oh, fuck, now I need someone to run the show. Thank you, Savannah. I need to find a door person. Thank you, Chris. I need to find Richie to run sound. I'm like, I'm doing all of this, like, basically between Tuesday and Friday, and then the show was Saturday while we were at Camp Pennsylvania. So it's like, I'm just putting this all together.
Never a dull moment, man. I mean, constantly putting out fires is like my entire day to day. I feel like I jokingly say that like 90% of this job is just delivering bad news to people, and the other 10% is the good news. But it's just like, yeah, man, it's props to you for doing that. Obviously, that shit's never easy.
Every phone call is usually bad. I have this buddy of mine, Des. He does sound for most of my shows. Before he calls me or asks me to call, he'll send me a phone with a smiley face, because I have gotten so burned every time someone calls me that's in a band or is working a show for me. They never call to say, hey, Scott, we're so excited to play the show tomorrow. It sounds like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah. Anytime I get a call, I'm just like, "What's wrong now? What do I do?"
Exactly.
Now?
Yes. It's not just me.
Yeah. What's funny too that you mentioned that too is like anytime I do get like a text or a call where it's someone essentially just wants to show gratitude or thank me or whatever, it's almost like jarring, because you're just like, but, and then what's the other part? And you know what I mean? And so it's like, yeah, I guess it's like, it's funny that like we're more thrown off when there is good news or someone literally just wants to like thank us or whatever, because it happens so infrequent that it's, I mean, yeah, it's just funny. Yeah.
It is, because like I can see an email from you and I don't stress about it because I get lots of emails from you and that's fine. But if you called me, I'd be like, why is Brent calling me? He emails me. I'm a little bit confused right now.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
No, I'm just gonna do that just to fuck. No, I'm just kidding. I would never do that. As a high anxiety person, I try to learn what triggers other people, and so I definitely try. I would absolutely not.
No, it's all good. It's my own personal trigger. My wife and kids call me. That's pretty much it. Anyone else calls me, I'm like, My recording engineer, Josh from Danger Room, he'll often call me with like problems, but he's already figured out the problem. He just wants to bitch about how he had to solve the problem. So like, I know his phone calls. I know he's calling about it. It's like, it's always like, And if he hasn't solved it, he always does. So I just listen to him like complain. And then I walk away going, I'm sure he'll figure it out.
Yeah, I get a lot of those like vent phone calls too. Yes. And I'm just like, is there a problem you need me to help you solve? Or do you just want to complain? I mean, it's totally cool if you want to call me to complain. That's fine. But if there's a call to action here, let me know.
Sorry that the symbols aren't showing up from the overhead mics of the show that we recorded. Is there anything I can do? No, I think I got it. I think I have an idea. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I trust you.
That's so funny. Yeah.
So, do you book shows for your own band as well then?
Yeah. I currently play in Omnigon.
Yes.
To back up a little bit too, like I played in We Are the Union for 6 years.
Okay.
And, I eventually left. I guess this is kind of like a crucial part in my career. At one point I got to the point where I was playing and we were playing such big shows that like all the behind the scenes work was of this caliber, and we were playing shows of this caliber. And the best way I can like explain it to people is your musician brain and your like tour manager or like problem solving brain are like completely two different sides of your brain.
Yes.
And trying to use both at a show is a terrible idea. Mm-hmm. At least for me. I've seen other people pull it off. Paul from the Flatliners, I saw that guy perform flawlessly and also production manage an entire show. It was inspirational. I was just like, I can't do that. And so with Watu, I was like, I felt like I just couldn't even like perform, musically at the level that I needed to, while also do the other stuff. And it kind of got to like this like fork in the road of my life where I had to be like, okay, do I want to pursue the behind the scenes stuff, or do I want to, try to be a drummer? And I was like, I thought about it for a couple weeks, and then eventually I was kind of like, you know what? I kind of just like hiding. I mean, I joke too that I play drums so that I can like hide out in the back. I hate playing on like a drum riser, all that stuff or whatever. So yeah, I kind of had to like make a decision that I was like, I actually do prefer this other thing. Part of me thought like, I was like, oh, am I admitting defeat, that I'm not trying to pursue a career as a musician? And I was like, this is ridiculous. Obviously, like, it's way more realistic to make money doing the other stuff than trying to make it as a musician. And at that point also, like, kind of my relationship with playing the drums was a little bit ruined because I was so stressed all the time. It just wasn't fun anymore. And, if music's not fun anymore, like, what the fuck are you doing? And so yeah, at one point I had to, I chatted with the band, and I was basically like, hey, I want to leave the band as a musician. Obviously, still want to be on the team, like, booking and the management role, but, like, and everyone responded very positively to it. And I thought it was going to be weird. I thought the first tour that happened where I wasn't on drums and there was someone else there, it was going to be weird. And it wasn't at all. It felt like completely normal. And it kind of validated my decision. And I was kind of like, cool, I can do this stuff for work. But then when I play drums, I can kind of like do it, on my own terms. Not very often. I don't have to try to like tour myself to death, and it can just be fun. And that's kind of where Omnigon kind of came in. And like Omnigon, like Adam does a very good job. Like, even though I say I'm not going to like, do the tour managing, or I'm not going to do this, I still do a little bit of that. I kind of just, there's no way I'm ever going to like fully not do that. But he does a pretty good job at like making sure I don't drive myself crazy with all that. And obviously Omnigon's playing like, slightly smaller shows than We Are the Union, and we're not touring that much and everything. But of course, like by nature, yes, I just book all the Omnigon shows because it's like, I get it. Makes sense. Like I'm not gonna give that up to anybody. Yeah, there's just like, again, I'm so bad at just like delegating out stuff or like relinquishing, certain roles that I have. Yeah, it's funny to watch like some bands who have musicians who were in that manager role or whatever, and seeing them like also kind of struggle with relinquishing that and getting to that point. And I get it. Like, it's, as a musician, you want certain things done a certain way, and if you don't have that right person doing that for you, then yeah, it becomes kind of annoying. And obviously, you're that person who can do it the right way. So I don't know.
Perfect sense. I mean, so I play drums as well, and I did a 2-day event rallying the Valley for the record label. And my wife and I are in a band called the Martinsters, where we do like some punk rock covers. And we were going to play the show, and I was like, I want it to open. I was like, because if I'm going to play a show, I'm running. I need to open and just get it over with so I can focus back on doing what I need to do.
For sure.
Our guitarist couldn't get there, so we had to play like midway through the night. And I'm like, I don't like this. It's fine. I'll do it. But I'm like, we got set up so quick. I was like, I'm ready to go. Like, I don't want to have to do both. And like right now, I was like, I'm in that band, and I'm in a band called Good Blasphemy doing Bad Religion covers. Both are very fun. But even though I like being a drummer, I'm more focused on doing the record label and the promotion. I'm getting close to 50 years old. I don't know how much more touring, how much more my body can handle. Like you said, Flex just came back from their tour, and their drummer, Nick, I guess usually manages most of their tour. He's like, best tour ever. Never had to worry about a thing. I think we played our best. He's like, I know I played my best because I didn't have to worry about anything because you handled everything. Like, there was never an issue. It's like I no longer had to think about. I just read what you had put in the documents, and we just showed up, and you had handled everything.
Yep.
There were posters there when we got there. He's like, I just got to be a band. He's like, I never been a band. And I was like, well, okay, then. I'm glad you enjoyed the tour. He's like,
what an interesting concept. I know. That's what I'm telling my bands all the time. I'm like, dude, let me do all the nerd work. You're just supposed to show up and have fun and play your show. That's it. And again, like, you shouldn't have to use your other brain. You should just be using your musician brain. And I feel like when musicians can show up and literally just use their musician brain, then like it's just, the show's going to be better. They're going to have a good time. Everything's going to work.
And then they're all set to go. And that's why, like, I feed the bands. I bought a back line. You show up. Here's your drink tickets. Here's your set time. That's it.
Yeah, it's that easy.
It's your job. And then come play. And then you should get paid, even if you're the local band, because it's not just the 30 minutes you're on stage. It's all the weeks and months you spend practicing to perform that night that you deserve to be compensated for as best as a small promoter can do it, or big promoter.
Yes.
So what's the best part about being a booking agent then? What's the part that makes you go, yeah?
It's funny, like, I sometimes have to catch myself from essentially being, like, really jaded, So there is moments, I try to find moments of, like, essentially gratitude and kind of being like, dude, these bands that I am friends with and chat with every day, and I'm creating these events for, like, these were and still are, like, my favorite bands. And it's like, dude, if you were to tell my middle school self,
yes.
Like, I just posted this, like, everyone on their Instagram stories was like, oh, it was the thing going around where you post a photo of yourself, like, when you were a teenager. And I have this one where I'm like, I don't remember what age I was. I was like early teens, and I'm in my old bedroom, and I have all these, like, punk posters in the background. And, like, one of them right behind me is a Destruction by Definition poster. Nice. And I'm just like, yeah, try to tell that kid that, like, he's just managing this fucking band now, Right. So, like, yeah, every once in a while I'll have to, like, and I'm often at shows that I've booked, whether I'm tour managing or even just, like, hanging or whatever. And, like, because I do like to witness them in person. And, like, yeah, sometimes I have to be like, dude, everyone is here because of me. This is fucking weird, Like, right? So, yeah, just, like, putting together, just acknowledging that I'm putting together, like, cool shit, and just, like, people like seeing people having fun at those events and everything like that. But, like, yeah, just, like, the having to kind of, like, the frequent reminders that like, dude, this like, everyone I went to high school with, like, they're working jobs they probably fucking hate, and I'm just like, I'm essentially monetizing what I did for fun in high school. You know what I mean? Like, I hate this. I mean, from a capitalist perspective, that's essentially what I'm doing, right? Like, so I think that's definitely the best part, is just kind of acknowledging that, like, this is how I'm paying the bills, and these are who my friends are, and, like, these people that I looked up to for years are, like, the ones coming to me for advice, and I'm just like, dude, I'm just like some shithead in my office wearing gym shorts. Like, I don't know, dude. So yeah, that's definitely the best
awesome.
part for sure.
Now, you mentioned you had started working with someone, and obviously your bandwidth is limited to how many bands you can handle. And I don't mean to make a pun out of that, but have you ever thought about bringing on someone so you could bring on more bands, or do you want to keep it just yourself? Because, like me, you sound like a bit of a control freak. I say that with all kindness.
No, it's totally good. Not offended. Yeah, I mean, I've had people hit me up too, and they're always just like, "Oh, if you ever need an assistant or another agent," and like, I would absolutely benefit from having, and I hate to use the term assistant. I feel like that's so demeaning, but like, so much of my day-to-day is spent not booking the actual shows because I'm, dealing with marketing, or I'm dealing with merch, or I'm dealing with, the advancing of a show, or just, the day-to-day operations rather than the actual booking. And so, like, having someone to help me with that would be absolutely crucial. The problem is I live in California. It's very expensive to live out here. It's not getting any cheaper. And so at the current moment, I don't think my finances would, doesn't give me the option to hire someone. But yeah, I definitely would love to expand at some point. I do think that there is something in like keeping everything somewhat concise though, because I've seen like some rosters that just have like hundreds of bands, and I'm just like, this is like, these bands are not getting the attention they need at all. Like, there's no way. So like, I think that even if I did hire someone, to take on a bit more bands, I think like, if anything, it would be like, 4 or 5 more bands. I'm not trying to have an entire empire of bands who are all like getting a very loop. That's the thing, is the more stretched thin you are, like the more unfair it is to those bands, the more the work starts to kind of like dilute. And because again, I'm so hands-on with stuff. And even if I had someone else, I want them to be hands-on too. And the larger the roster grows, then the less they would be able to do something like that. And then the shows suffer, and blah blah blah. Then we just kind of turn into any old booking agency. So I don't know, but yeah, I would absolutely love someone at some point, and I do hope to get there, because I don't know. I feel like I have like I'd like to think I have a pretty creative brain when it comes to like booking shows, and like sometimes I just like won't be able, I can't get to the creative side of this because I'm dealing with paperwork, or I'm dealing with like, oh shit, I should probably post on this band's social media to make sure we're promoting the show, or whatever kind of thing.
So do you control all the band's social medias for all the bands you book, or do they just give you...
I wouldn't say I control all of it, but I do have access, and like, some of the older bands, like it's just easier if I do the posting for them, not some folks don't know how to navigate social media, but it's also just like easier because, like, again, every morning, like the first task I do is I check ticket counts, and I'll be like, hey, are we close enough where I should, post that it's half sold out, or if shows be like slow, like I'll make something to, that's just another reason to post. Like, so I do a lot of, I feel like I do it on the fly so much that like I would hate to bug a band, be like, hey, I want you to do this right now, kind of thing. That way, it's just like, it's very seamless. Like, if there's something that I need to happen, I can just kind of do it right then and there. And it's also helpful too, like for like, Suicide Machines, like being on the road, like every time when they're on stage, people are posting stories. I can be like at home, resharing those like kind of in real time.
Sure.
Kind of stuff like that. So like all the bands like do still have obviously access to their own social media. I haven't hijacked it or anything like that, but like, from a marketing perspective and like the way that I approach marketing, it's just so much easier for me to have access to their social media and like their bands in town and like their email list and stuff like that. Again, stuff that does take me away from booking like the newer stuff, but it does help me, I feel like, make it a bit more easier for me to help sell the current shows that I have on sale and stuff like that.
That makes sense. So you always send me flyers. Do you make those yourself, or do you have like do you reach out to graphic artists to make those?
No, for the most part, there's there's a handful of artists that like each band works or myself work with, and we'll get that. Sometimes I do. Sometimes the only thing that I'm doing though is they'll send me just like a layered file of like the full tour, and then I'll go in and essentially make the localized version for each city, which is funny too, because I know that's like one of those things that you're supposed to just send the blank thing to the promoter and let them do it. But again, I've been burnt so many times in the past, or I've had a promoter just like, there's nothing worse than a just terribly photoshopped localized poster where like they're not using a PNG file or they're like this or that. And I think because of that, I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to make this consistent look. Like I'm already building the template. I may as well, like, all I got to do is copy and paste the different, show dates information in there. So that sometimes that's me doing that, but it's like, still using the font file from the original and just giving it the consistent look and also making it easier for the promoter because I'm just like, hey, you don't even have to make the localized full file. Here it is in all these formats. Like, good to go, with the exception of like throwing their logo on it or whatever, but for the most part like the work is done. So yeah, we're hiring on artists for the most part to make like the initial thing, but yeah, localized sometimes.
Okay, very cool. Well, I don't want to take up more of your time. It's already been like an hour and I
wow, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, no, I was like, I try and keep track of time for you, so I know you're a busy man. I have really enjoyed chatting with you.
Same, honestly, yeah, thank you. I'm notoriously very bad on podcasts, I feel like, mainly because I'm just so bad articulating myself. But like, no, this one was fun, and I felt like I didn't have to stress too much. No,
you were very great. You're very informational. You were casual. I think you just really elucidated for me, at least, like the differences between like, the DIY, which you're still in the DIY realm, but like me booking for small bands versus you booking for those, and how someone can like actually be helpful to their friends, but also maybe make a living, which I think is really dope.
Yeah, thank you. And I say this a ton. Like maybe this statement may make me the worst booking agent or the best booking agent, but I try to navigate the industry with compassion and just being overtly nice to people. And that's not like a performative thing. That's just how I want to do it. I know that as an agent, you're supposed to be like a shark and be mean to people, stern or whatever. And like very, very rarely do I have to do that. But like I don't know, man.
No,
this is a shit industry. Everybody has thankless jobs, and I just want to be nice to people. So I feel like that probably burns me sometimes with people taking advantage of me, but I also feel like I get enough wins in that column to justify it. So,
but I think that comes across in your emails, even before I met you at Camp Pennsylvania, right? And I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, because like as a promoter, I like to say that we're heart-led. We're trying to make safe space so people feel they can enjoy themselves. And, I just feel like you are similar along that lines. Like I have Be More Kind tattooed on me because, I used to be a middle school teacher and I was like, if we can just be more kind to each other.
Yeah.
As children and as adults, it's amazing how much the role would be. And when I've had a situation where I'm angry or someone's done something wrong to me, I think, well, what's the kindest way I can deal with this?
Totally.
Not that it makes me feel the best or it gets my revenge or punishes the person. What's the kindest way that we can move forward on this?
Yes, I agree with that.
And if we can do that, it's all good.
Yep.
It's all good.
Yep.
Because we all screw up sometimes. We all make mistakes. So ain't none of us perfect.
That is very correct. Yes. Love that.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening or watching, whichever one you did. Thank you, Brent, for being here. I greatly appreciate it. And enjoy.
Cool. Thanks for having me.